back. What day is this?
It's like October 4th, 2018.
October 4th. Wait a second. And it's January 31st, 2019?
We had to think about the year, like, oh yeah.
I told you not to hit that button.
Yeah, I edited out all our podcasts between then and now.
I can't believe this. The Four Hauntsmen are back. And you know what happened? We recorded 4 podcasts in a row, and it completely screwed up our mojo. We were on too much of a roll.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, so the last episode we released was October 2nd, 2018. And, we had done a bunch of stuff, and to the point that, like, I think we took like a week or 2 break, and then I came to Halloween Horror Nights, and no one wanted my opinion on Halloween Horror Nights, so we just stopped recording.
We went way off the rails. And you know what the problem is? Somebody asked, like, on Twitter, I remember this distinctly, like, when is the next episode coming out? We were like, oh, like in another week.
Yeah, anytime now.
And it's been another week. We just hit the fast forward button.
Well, it truly is another week. It's just not
the next week.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've got Paul, we've got Kyle, we've got Joey. Joey.
Hello.
Yes. How you doing, buddy?
I'm back from Warner Brothers, yeah.
That was a hell of a long trip, dude. You've been out there for months.
Yeah, I was in line for the Conjuring maze still. It just took forever. 3 people at a time.
So, just to recap where we left off, because, obviously we're in 2019. We're actually in full swing of rumor season. This is where code words have come out for Halloween Horror Nights in the parks, and people are excited already about Halloween, and it's literally 9 months away. But the last show in October, it was our 4th consecutive show. We had Mr. Johnny Bronto on from Haunt Scene on that show, and we talked about local haunts that we were ramping up and hitting at that time because we were into Halloween Horror Nights. We were into Howl-O-Scream. We had hit Warehouse 31 and 13th Floor, and we did a lot of fun stuff, and then we did more fun stuff, so much so that we just never talked about it again, and we suck.
Nah, no. We left you waiting in anticipation, and hopefully you guys are still sticking around, or have stuck around, and you're pleasantly surprised by this notification on your podcast or YouTube feed. But yeah, we have a couple things that we never talked about. Since our last episode, I don't know if you guys remember, or if you're new to the show, I have, for the last, I don't know, since HHN 18, other than 2 years, had come opening weekend for every Halloween Horror Nights, but because of hurricane season keeping me away, I wasn't able to come until mid-October this year. And actually, another hurricane was coming through, and I had to change my flight and come in early to avoid the hurricane that was coming. So I left my loved ones to deal with the hurricane and came down to Orlando.
Listen, that's important stuff,
They're fine. It's Virginia Beach. We never get hit that bad. And we didn't. So I went to Halloween Horror Nights. I went to Tampa Howl-O-Scream, which, I went with a couple of folks, some on the podcast, some not. And I don't know. I enjoyed both. I really had a blast at Howl-O-Scream. I don't know that we went too deep into it last time we were on the show, but I had a really fun time with it. I think we made a mistake by going Saturday night, but thankfully we also went to Cigar City Brewing right before going, so it wasn't that painful. We numbed the pain a little bit, but yeah, it was very crowded. But we used that Fright Feast. Yeah, Fright Feast. And we were able to hit almost every house. Actually, no, we did hit every house.
We made it all through with the express from the Fright Feast.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed it. I loved the Simon Slaughterhouse. I know that house got a lot of, crap. But
it literally smelled like it. That was one of the houses with that smell inside of it.
But I loved it. I loved that they had an entire scare zone that led up to it. I like the fact that they had a dude serving barbecue in the scare zone. it was, I enjoyed Howl-O-Scream last year, and it was my first time going to Howl-O-Scream probably in, I'm going to say 8 years.
In Tampa.
In Tampa, yeah. I go to Howl-O-Scream in Busch Gardens, Williamsburg every year.
Yeah, the first time in the year we went to Howl-O-Scream. Mary and Jess and Cheap Seat family and a bunch of other friends all went together. And I didn't think that it was as good the first weekend as it was when we went back when you were in town. And it was so busy. And I don't think it's necessarily just because it was a Saturday night. The Howl-O-Scream was really busy in 2018 because of the amount of houses that they had. They dropped down to 6 houses. It was so busy, in fact, that scare zone that led into Simon's, which was pretty awesome. I loved that scare zone and the way that it bled into the house. They had to clear all the actors out of it because there were so many people there crowding the scare zone area. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with Howl-O-Scream this year. But I did think that the event got much better as the season went on last year. I'm looking forward to it again.
Yeah, I think for, as someone who goes typically opening weekend to these types of events, you do see changes throughout the event, things that they learn. They've been doing it for 20 plus years in the case of pretty much any major theme park horror event. But, it's still like the new themes, the new actors, the new concepts, and sometimes it just takes a while to build into it. I don't think we talked about this on the show because we stopped recording, but I went to the Busch Gardens Williamsburg a couple times this year for Howl-O-Scream, and the first time I went, they had their new jester-themed scare zone that was supposed to be like Victorian-era French jesters that were scary, and I guess people didn't find them scary because the next time I went, it was chainsaw clowns. And I'm like, hold on, I thought this was the Fool's Court scare zone. I mean, I guess it's kind of similar, but it's funny the changes that they make for things that don't work. Especially that one was a big deal because it was an advertised new scare zone that they just completely revamped or did away with.
Huh. That's interesting. And of course, so we all went to Halloween Horror Nights last year, and we went, some of us, from the beginning to the end. And any final thoughts? I mean, Paul, we never got any of your thoughts on Halloween Horror Nights.
Man, I don't even remember that thing. No. So final thoughts is, I think this year's Halloween Horror Nights, or HHN28, last year's Halloween Horror Nights, because we're building up to this year's. I thought it was a solid year. If I were to rank it, I would rank it probably above HHN27. There were some genuinely good houses this year, both in the IPs and in the original properties. Some beautiful scare zone work was out there on display. So, I think some concepts really connected with people. The killer clowns, people seem to love. I thought the scare zone was visually interesting and had some, good actors and interaction. Stranger Things was an awesome house. Poltergeist, I thought, was an awesome house. Other houses didn't really land with me. Halloween, Trick or Treat. I think Halloween, which is sadly one of the houses I was looking forward to the most, didn't resonate with me pretty much at all. And I don't know how you guys felt about it. I don't really remember, but I think you guys maybe felt a little more favorable towards it than I did. I don't remember.
What, Halloween?
Yeah, Halloween 4, I think.
No, it was horrible.
Yeah, it was a rough one. It definitely felt like a bit of a rush job, and that's no offense to anyone who actually worked on it. It's just one of those things that it just, as a fan of the movie and of the previous Halloween houses, just didn't really connect with me.
I mean, in fairness, I suspect again that this was not supposed to be Halloween 4, but probably based off the reboot of 2018 Halloween. It's tough to figure out what the name is at this point.
But then again, I was stalling for time so I could look up the houses. Slaughter Cinema, ton of fun. Carnival Graveyard, not scary particularly, but I thought it was a beautiful house. I actually like Seeds of Extinction. I know no one else does. Scary Tales, another beautiful house. Just really, really intricate. Lots of like hidden Easter eggs in that one. And last but not least, in fact, my favorite house, the underdog for me, Dead Exposure Patient Zero. That house more than any other house scared me.
Joey, what house did you like the best? Was it the lozenge in a wrapper house?
I liked. It was always between Slaughter Cinema and Poltergeist for me. It was between those two all the time, constantly.
Yeah, Poltergeist was better than it had any right to be. It was scarier than the movie.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the movie's only scary for like 2 minutes at the end.
True.
But at the Seeds of Extinction, so do we agree we can use like our PG-13 rating on this one?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay, so the best quote, I think Kyle only went on it once. So first time,
every time that somebody came to visit me, I had to go through that house.
Every time we were there, I'm like, "You want to go on it?" You're like, "No." But the first time we went on it, it was like me and Mary, like everybody. We go through it when they put our line in the giant conga from like way behind, so it took like an extra 30 minutes with Express to get through it. As soon as we come out that exit, I look you right in the eye. You just look at me and go, "That house could eat a dick," and that was like, I was like, "Really?" I was like, "It wasn't that bad." Like,
I didn't like that house.
Which house are we talking about again?
Seeds of Extinction.
I liked it, man.
I feel bad. Like I've got a lot of friends and viewers, and people that that we know that were in that house, and it's no knock to the actors. They were very limited in what they could do. They had very restricting ghillie suits and boo holes. I didn't care for the house the first time that Joey was talking about too. Like we got stuck in the house because the conga line was too long, and we got stuck in a part where it was raining on us consistently for like 10 minutes straight, where we were just stuck. We couldn't exit, couldn't move forward. But they fixed that, left the flow of it. I went through the house, maybe just shy of 10 times. They kept having people come to town that wanted to go through.
The main problem was how damn far that was. Seeds of Extinction, I felt like I was walking back to my hotel. It was so far away, like to the point that I wanted to go through it, and I'm like, but I don't want to walk that far. Like I even had the fast pass, or not the fast pass, but the HHN Russia Fear with Express.
Yep.
And I was like, it's still like a 15-minute walk back there. And so I just didn't want to do it at the end of the night.
It was like a Lord of the Rings crusade to have to get back to that house.
It really was. And then you go through it and you're all wet, and then you got to walk all the way back just to go to the house next to it, which was Trick or Treat.
Yeah.
I will say overall, the houses this year I thought were fantastic. If I were to say that HHN28 had a weakness for me, it was in the scare zones and the Academy of Villains show. The scare zones, I didn't particularly get much out of any of them. If anything, the Harvest actually was pretty fun. I enjoyed that one. I enjoyed the actors were really good in the Harvest, and visually, Twisted Tradition was beautiful. But I'm gonna throw out a hashtag unpopular opinion.
Was that zone called Twisted Tradition?
The one in Central Park?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm losing track of like what year, what that zone is called. It's always like the traditional zone, but
yeah. But I'm gonna throw out an unpopular opinion here. I really think they need to stop doing scare zones in Central Park. That area just is too crowded, and I don't get, I thought I enjoy walking through those scare zones during the day because I get to see the props, but at night, between the fog and the 10,000 people in one small area, there's really nothing there that it just takes away from the enjoyment of it, unless you go on, I guess, a super slow night. I just feel like Central Park is too small now for the level of crowds which, just to put things into perspective, HHN sold out every night that I attend, not because I was there, or maybe because I was there, but sold out every night that I attended of single night tickets.
Yeah, it was a very busy year, and it's only going to keep getting busier. I don't think that it, and there was a good discussion, like, was it Stranger Things that packed the people in? And I don't think that it is. I think it's this renaissance for horror and haunt stuff, because it's a good epidemic, but it's an epidemic nonetheless that's happening everywhere. I went to Six Flags, it's packed. You go to independent haunts, they're packed. And these haunts that are independent now, and we'll get to this in a moment, but I mean, they're doing all different types of holiday events, Christmas, Valentine's, I won't be surprised if we see something for Easter, like, it's the demand for haunted stuff is off the charts. And I agree. I mean, that scare zone is kind of constricted, or constricting. When you go through its choke point.
Yeah, I think it could be decorated. I mean, certainly keep the pumpkins and the trees and all that. Busch Gardens has areas that are heavily decorated that aren't necessarily scare zones, both Williamsburg and Tampa. And I think that is a perfect area for that, to set up this cool traditional Halloween themed walkthrough, but the inclusion of actors or any props that block that walkway, it makes for just a bit of a claustrophobic nightmare.
Yeah. I thought that the year was good also. I think the houses were fine. Some of them I liked better. It's funny throughout the season, where I thought like rankings for houses really changed a bunch, but I liked the Scary Tales. I liked Carnival Graveyard. I liked Poltergeist. There was a lot to like. I think my appreciation factor changes also depending on how many people I'm jammed in going through those houses with, and the wait time and stuff like that, and the crowd factor. It definitely plays a big part into the enjoyment of the event, I think, to me. And that may be, your mileage may vary for other people, but as the events get more crowded, I had a bunch of messages that were asking, like, why weren't you going as often as you did in prior years? And I went a ton. I didn't film a bunch when we were there, but it was kind of like ducking in and out, hitting a couple of things strategically. And Joey was there with me a bunch of times. It's frustrating, I think, when you have Express and you're waiting 30 minutes to get in to a house and conga lining through, and some of the scares aren't there because you're just seeing like the Jack in the Box continually popping out.
Yep.
So I don't know, but that's HHN last year. It kind of on the flip side, as far as not conga lining through and being pulsed a little bit, we had the independent haunts, but we also had Joey went out to California, and he was the lone hauntsman that went out to the Warner Brothers Horror Made here, and we never got any feedback on it, on the podcast at least.
So here's my short review. That's the only thing you need to go to this year. The end. It's the best. I liked
What did you like about it?
Loved everything. So getting there is very... So I did... Okay, I guess to preface it, I did the Losers Club, which is kind of like the VIP ticket, where you get... I mean, the big thing is you get front of the line, you get 2 free drinks in the bar themed after... What's that show? True Blood. But you also park off-site at the main VIP area, and you hop in a tram. These little tiny trams are almost like luxury golf carts, and they take you across the street through the back lot, and then from there you walk in. But I mean, just from the moment you walk in, you're on this back lot, and it's just so cool, like how they themed it, decked it out. They had map projection and windows, and at no point did I ever feel like Universal Orlando or Hollywood or any of these other haunts where you're constantly bumping into people. I mean, you had so much room at all times. You could just stick your arms out and you would never touch anybody for the most part. So as far as the mazes went, I'll say my favorite one was, ironically, the Camp Crystal Lake. And I probably had a really, really good showing of it, but you hop on one of those little golf cart trams. They drive like a group of 8 or 10 of you to the lake. You get off, and it starts off, pretty just like you expect. There's a girl comes ready to have a cabin, like, oh, Jason's going to get me. The guy who plays Jason, and I sent you the picture, like, he legit jumped out of the water in the lake and just started marching up towards us from the beach. And it was at that moment, like, I was with my buddy Dan, he just looked at me and was like, thank you for inviting me. This is the greatest thing ever. I'm like, yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I don't know if he does it all the time. Like, I watched one of the videos, and he was already on the beach, but just seeing that was ridiculous. But then you kind of go through it, and they had a few Jasons, and it was kind of reminding me of Universal, where, they're big guys. And then you had your Freddy's, and there's a couple of cool scenes with him. And my runner-up with Batman Arkham Asylum maze. So we did that a couple times. I think we did it like 3 times. And it was different every time. So there was different characters depending which cast you got. And they also were in different rooms with different gags, different lighting. It's like the first one through, I had like Poison Ivy. She wasn't in the next one, but now I had Scarecrow like in his lab. They had like branching pathways. Also, there was probably 3 good jump scares in that maze. One of them was, ripped right out of David S. Pumpkins, where you're in an elevator and someone's by your feet comes through like a trap door. But if you like the video game, that maze was on point. I mean, and the actors in there were insane. Like the guys who played the Joker sounded like Mark Hamill. The makeup on a lot of these characters, just little details. Every time we went through it was kind of like taking my time. That was another thing I liked. When you're going through the mazes at Warner Brothers, there's no ops in there telling you to keep moving. You could just walk through the entire thing at your own pace. It doesn't matter. Except for The Conjuring, just because I'll get to that in a second. But you could just take your time. You could actually talk to like each actor if you want to. I mean, they'll have a conversation with you. You go to The Conjuring, and it's kind of a different beast because it's very prop, or what's the word I'm looking for? It's very set heavy. You go into one room and everything's triggered to go off, and then they run you into the next room and the gags happen. Oh, now we're gonna run to this room, and you're kind of going from like room to room to room, inside and outside. Was it cool? Yes. Was it worth the wait without the VIP? Debatable. And then you got it. It was kind of like your typical Horror Nights maze, but very, very long. And the biggest downside to it was you really only see Pennywise once, and you may not even see him that one time because he was behind the 3 doors from the movie, and you could open each door, and if you open the right one, he's right there. So unless you're the person that opens the door, you're really not getting an interaction with him.
So that part was kind of like the lifted from what they did on the Street Experience last year in Hollywood, right?
Yeah, I opened each door, and they actually had like one of them had the fridge, another one had like the girl that was hanging, and then if you open the door on the far left, Pennywise is there, and then you continue on through the rest of the maze. Exorcist was not a maze, but it was kind of like this 10-minute 4D show, and you got to really be in the front row to get the full effect of that because they had actresses dressed up like Linda Blair, and the lights would go off and they come back on. Now she's like hovering over you and just like eyes in the back of her head, vomiting and water spraying. Lights go off, she's gone.
That's cool.
Very cool. It was cool.
So, out of curiosity, Joey, you said something about like you did the Losers Club. Yeah. And you said, if you didn't, wouldn't have been worth it, waiting in the regular lines. Any idea of how long the regular line wait was?
Yeah. So I went the very, very last day of the event at the end of October. So keep that in mind. Like anywhere, it's technically going to be crowded, although they have a set amount of tickets that they sell. The longest wait that I remember at any time was The Conjuring. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact they let in like so many people at once and they have to reset each room. It was about a 60-minute wait at its peak.
Oh, wow.
That's a long time.
And yeah, I mean, then we did Batman. When we first got in there, we did a few mazes because everything was like a walk-on. Like when we got up there when the doors opened. So we're like, all right, we did Batman, we did Pennywise. I regret not running to Camp Crystal Lake first. Just because of how cool it was. We only did that once because that line was also an hour at its peak. And they stopped it at 10 o'clock, I think, for some reason. So would I go there as standby? Yeah, you'll get everything done easily. But it was just nicer to have that pass because you could do most things twice. You never really felt rushed. They actually had the prop museum that they have during the regular tour open. So I never saw that, so I got to go in there. They had like a Tim Burton exhibit, but then the rest of it was open. I thought that was cool. They had some dining. They had a lot of characters roaming the streets. They had another Reagan from The Exorcist outside of the church, and she was in full-on character. I mean, just crawling backwards on her hands, like jumping out, like doing photos. A lot of them, yeah, they were, Joker was outside, the Batman, one of them, in the judge outfit. They had a stage show going. They also had like this really kind of like Dr. Doom's Fearfall, but in the middle, like a carnival ride version of it. But like I said, at no point did you ever feel like you were just stuck in a giant crowd. That's what I really liked about it. They had an awesome gift shop too. Fortunately, most of the stuff I wanted was already sold out.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
Am I going to go back next year? Probably, most likely. If I still lived in California, I mean, I would definitely pick that over Hollywood Horror Nights in a heartbeat. They put a lot of there's a lot of detail in those mazes. I mean, Pennywise especially. Like, it wasn't really scary, but if you're a fan of the movie, it was cool. I mean, they had this one effect, kind of like with when you're in the sewer and the one kid had the lighter with the spray paint can. They recreated that effect.
Oh wow.
Room where the girl in the bathroom with the hair, that was pretty cool. The one thing I didn't like about Pennywise, especially if you're only going to have like one inside the maze, don't put him in a rubber mask. Take the extra 20 minutes to put the paint on the guy. It was cool.
And I think the cool thing about it too was that they had the props from the movie integrated in the houses, right? And the experiences. Yeah,
they did. Pennywise, especially, like those 3 doors and what was in them was directly from the movie. I know Conjuring, there was a few things. Like the original Annabelle doll was there.
Yeah.
You're like right. At one point, I was right next to her. There's some really cool map projection in that maze. And then I'm sure everyone's seen the big scare at the end with the nun coming out of the wall.
Yep.
When you see that done in person and you don't know it's coming, it's cool. It's really cool. And Batman, I mean, I keep going back to that one, but it was just so... Because I love the Arkham games, and that maze was just... I mean, I was like grinning ear to ear. And they were all just like spot on, sounded, looked like, the video game counterparts.
I'm sad that I didn't get out there. I'm interested in what they're going to do this year. And what they're going to, when we spoke with the folks behind the event last year, they had explained, like, as far as growing, they can't be, a Halloween Horror Nights. They can't add capacity. They can add nights, and they can't add more to the space that they are because they're a working set also. But it's a case of what they want to be able to do. I mean, when we spoke to them last year, they mentioned The Shining as a possibility. There's also the possibility that they could do a Harry Potter type Halloween event out there too. There was a bunch of different IPs that they had referenced last year that it's really interesting because, if we go back to stuff that we talked about in season 2, so going back to like September time period or so, that they're protective of their IPs, and we're not going to see those IPs from Warner Brothers at Halloween Horror Nights in 2019. We're not going to see. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, Warner Brothers likes to protect their fantastic worlds, and I don't blame them.
Yeah, I mean, so that's I mean, if there's any immediate, red flags being raised, I mean, obviously it's from the rumored, I guess we'll say it's 4th park for Universal, even a like 3rd ride is parked. Yeah, it had leaked that they were looking to use the Fantastic Worlds name, and the word is out there that Warner Brothers is filing injunctions to stop them from using that name. So when we spoke with Warner Brothers last year, they were all about the fact that they recognize that Universal is a great partner for them, and that they want to play nice with them or play fair. It doesn't mean that they want to have them use their IPs, though. And I think that they're feeling themselves out because I think that over time they realized that they were pretty much just leaving money on the table, by not putting their IPs to full use for their own benefit out of like the Horror Made Here event. So
I could see next year, like I could see Batman coming back this year easily. I could kind of see Conjuring and It going away.
Well, except that this year, right? So Warner Brothers is releasing another Conjuring film this year. They're releasing It Chapter 2. And The Curse of La Llorona is coming out this year also from Warner Brothers. So they have a decent... And Doctor Sleep is coming out later this year, the sequel to The Shining. So, there's a decent amount there that Warner Brothers could lean on in their horror event this year.
Yep.
Yeah, La Llorona could easily go to where Camp Crystal Lake was. The It house was huge. I mean, you basically walked into these houses in the back lot, but you kind of kept going through different ones, and they were all just these empty rooms, but it was massive. Batman was kind of in a soundstage behind like a courthouse, also big. I don't want to see that one leave. That one was just too good. Conjuring, I feel like in the interest of time, they could replace it, but you would lose that one kind of special maze or experience you're not really going to get anywhere else. So
it'll be intriguing. So I mean, I would look forward to Warner Brothers being out at MidSummer Scream again this year, and hopefully giving a nod out there to what the IPs are that they'll be using for the 2019 event. So circling back to things that have happened since we met, in addition to Halloween-based events, because, I mean, for Halloween, by the way, we also missed at one point talking about Netherworld and Six Flags Georgia, Petrified Forest. We killed more zombies at the Budweiser brewery. I guess we didn't do a good enough job there, too, because, like, the Budweiser brewery tour went out of business. But Netherworld, I went out to Georgia, check it out, and I was blown away. Never been to Netherworld before. I can guarantee that we'll be back there this year. I have not stopped talking about it since I went, and it was game changer for me as far as haunts. It's people have this perception, I think, of going through a haunted house where people are going to jump out with sheets on them or something else because they go to horror nights, and it's everything gets compared to horror nights. And I would say any day of the week that I believe that Netherworld was better than at the Horror Nights event. I'm incredibly excited to go back again this year and to see what they do different. So, and that's not to say that Horror Nights is bad either. So don't take that out of that message, because we still love Horror Nights, but Netherworld was amazing. We just need to organize some type of group meeting spot so that we can get out there together this year. But since Halloween time, we had Christmas events this year. All hail Christmas. We had a Krampus event at 13th Floor in Jacksonville. We had a great time out at that event. It was their first Christmas event up in Jacksonville at the 13th Floor, and I thought they did a really fantastic job with it. And so they did so well, as a matter of fact, that the night that we went the I guess the second weekend or the second Saturday, whatever, we went the last night of the event. The line was so long that it wrapped around in the parking lot to be able to get in. And the 13th Floor, if folks that don't know, it's a corporation-owned haunt. So there's 13th floors across the country and other haunts by different various names that are under this parent organization. They use that as a measuring stick to see if they should do other holiday events going forward. And they've since announced that they'll be doing a Valentine's event based off of vampires. And that's coming up in another 2 weeks, another week, 2. Give me a moment, I'll look that up. But fantastic event up there for Christmas with Krampus. And then Warehouse 31, you can hear me type. Warehouse 31 did an event also, and theirs was based off of 4 individual like mini haunts within their overall haunt for Christmas. Fantastic time also. We spoke with the owner at that time when we were up there. They let us film in the house because they're doing demo on the house and tearing it down and redoing it in different structure. They're not sure if they're going to do 4 haunts this time or if it could be 2 or it could just be one big one in the space that they have. But they're repurposing that space and reestablishing their haunt for Halloween this year. So they're going to skip their Valentine haunt. But going back to 13th floor, their their Valentine's event is called Love Bites. And it's based off of vampires within the haunted experience that they have there. 13th floor, really fun place also, by the way. They have axe throwing up there. They have 4 mini games, 3 or 4. I think it's 4 mini games that they have on site. Fun place that you could spend time. It's open year round for the mini games and for the axe throwing. And the haunt will be open. Love Bites. As soon as my website decides to pull up here. Not my website, but their website. February 15th and 16th. So if you're in Jax or you're around, it's worth checking out. Good time at the 13th floor location up there. And so...
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple of... well, I shouldn't say a couple. There was one local haunt to me that did a Christmas event. It was Frightmare out in Chesapeake, Virginia, and I attended. I enjoyed it. It's a nice local family-owned haunt. The big one that's closest to me that does events like that is Bennett's Curse, which also did a Krampus-themed event. I was not able to get out there because it's a solid 4 hours from me, and it was only one weekend. Same with their upcoming Valentine's Day event. I would love to go to it, but I just don't know that I can make the trek out there. I think it's the weekend before Valentine's Day. But if you check it out, you should definitely let us know what you thought of it.
Yeah, it's funny with the 13th floor. I think originally they were looking to do it the weekend before Valentine's and the weekend after, and looks like they just stuck with the 15th and 16th. Yeah,
I think it just depends. I mean, if these things take off, it sounds like some of these Christmas events did take off, then they'll continue doing it. For all these people who want year-round haunts, this is the next best thing. It doesn't make sense that on a random Tuesday someone's going to want to go to a haunt, but on holiday-themed events, you can get your St. Patrick's Day themed haunt. You can get your Easter themed haunt, your Memorial Day haunt. I don't know how that's going to work, but holiday themed haunts certainly
4th
possible.
of July
with fireworks at the end.
Yeah, it's interesting, and probably the scariest thing out of having these Valentine's haunts at least is the folks that say Valentines instead of Valentines. It's time, not time.
Valentine.
Yeah, think of it that way. Right, so coming up, 2019. We got a few minutes here. Let's talk about HHN, Howl-O-Scream, whatever. What's on the docket? What do we think is coming? Halloween Horror Nights speculation already running rampant all over YouTube. Everyone's getting those hits and trying to talk up the potential for what Halloween Horror Nights will bring out there. Code names are floating out there already, so people trying to decipher what the code names could mean. Obviously, I think IPs are limited. Again, for 2019, I think more like partnership with like the Netflixes out there and things like that. So, again, without beating it to death, Warner Brothers taking a strong hold of their IPs, and Disney completed their acquisition of Fox. So There's fewer IPs to be able to be used. So, of course, you go on like the Universal pass holders page and things like that, and everyone's still out there thinking that they're going to get it to come to the parks and things like that, and don't really see that happening.
No, but hey, you may get some killer clowns. I think we will see. This is purely speculation. I haven't seen the code name list because honestly, those things are just like hard to decipher and usually not true. I do think we'll see an expansion of killer clowns. That was really popular last year, and they're doing another Killer Clowns movie, and the creators of the movie were very supportive of the event, so I wouldn't be surprised to see that. Of course, we'll likely see Stranger Things 2, Season 2, or some variation thereof.
I still never finished watching Season 2.
It's good. It's worth watching. You just got to get past that 7th episode that no one likes. I've seen Haunting of Hill House thrown out there as a potential. I don't know about that one. I don't know. Only because I saw the show and it's basically like This Is Us but with ghosts. It's not particularly scary, but it was popular, so you never know. I do think, if anything, we will see the potential that Universal will delve into their own horror library more. We'll probably see more Chucky, especially with the implementation of a new movie and TV series. I do think maybe they'll start reaching out to Netflix. Netflix has a bunch of horror on their service that's doing really well. So, and Stranger Things certainly doing well for HHN. And that's just original. That's just the IPs. I think, I think what we'll see is a lot of original properties. But as long as they have the one standout licensed property like a Stranger Things 2, those crowds are not going to die down anytime soon.
What do you think, Joey?
What do I think about bringing Netflix in?
Oh, all together, what do you think is going to pop up this year?
Honestly, I mean, I haven't really... I keep hoping for, I don't know, call it a hunch, but I have a feeling you'll see a classic Monsters. And for a few reasons. One, Hollywood did it. Two, they're really making a big push lately. I mean, with merchandise, murals on the side of sound stages in LA.
Well, and the whole Blumhouse thing, right? Blumhouse has now been given the Universal Monsters to take the reins.
Yep.
That's going to be interesting because they don't have to be a shared universe. But I don't know. I don't want more Netflix because I'd rather just see them do their own thing, to be honest. I don't need a whole bunch of IPs. Maybe Halloween 6.
Oh, boy.
Thorn.
Don't get me excited. I love the Thorn.
Oh, boy. I could see Hill House for sure popping up this year, and Stranger Things 2. I agree about the Killer Clowns. I think for original IPs, I could see Slaughter Cinema Part 2 come to be a thing this year. I think that they had a lot of fun with Slaughter Cinema last year, and they had a lot of success. I think that was like the one house that people really talked about afterwards because there was so much variation in the house. I think, maybe we'll get an Icon house this year. Next year is 30. I'd have to imagine that for 30, we're going to get the return at least of Jack, if not more. And, I don't know. I think that you get a storyline set up, to put Jack in place, or to put at least the icons in place. So.
I would hope so. We always hope for that kind of thing, and they never do. The last time that they did was at HHN28, which featured only for the final weekend. They had a scare zone where all the icons came out for one weekend only, the last weekend of the event. Now, that would be cool to see happen again, to lead up to the big HHN 30.
I think the other interesting thing is, one thing that and this is not coming from me saying that this is a fact or anything like that, or that because I don't want it to go back to people and say, well, Kyle said this was going to happen. The rumor that I'm being told, or that people repeatedly are telling me, is that there's not going to be a show this year. So that, kind of like Academy of Villains had run its course, and that they weren't doing any other type of show either. So I don't know. That would be really odd to me.
Yeah, I think they need something, whether it's Academy of Villains or something. Having no show, the shows seem to do well, and I didn't love the Academy of Villains show this year, but people, they help with crowds. It's something. Otherwise, you're really dealing with even more crowd control. People need a variety of things to do.
Yeah, I think it would be really interesting. I'd love to see a show come back that's more in line with the event. I didn't dislike Academy of Villains. I don't think that it fit well into a sit-down type space. I like the vibe of Academy of Villains being on the street and kind of feeling like, you can stand around and move around, and you're not tied down to having to sit there and watch the show.
I mean, I'd love to see a Jack's, the Jack's Back type show, or, they've had similar shows in the past, whether it's horror magic or something, just something more horror-ish than just a dance performance. And don't get me started on Bill and Ted, because I'm fine not seeing Bill and Ted again.
I kind of miss Bill and Ted now. It's funny, but I kind of miss that show. I think it was something fun to do and something good to sit down and rest for a little bit.
So I'm going to throw one thing out here about Halloween Horror Nights before, I've not seen it anywhere. I'm going to throw it out as a dark horse that maybe we'll see, despite not having heard any rumor to it. It's a Universal property, and all the creative are fans of it. Is the Monster Squad. It incorporates the classic Universal interpretations of the characters. They are doing either a reboot or something on it. I don't know. I would love to see that come to a Halloween Horror Nights, and we know just based on Twitter and Instagram feeds that everyone in charge over there is a huge fan of the movie, and they do like to pull out an old film every once in a while that they were fans of.
Yeah, I could see it.
I'd see it. I'd go to it.
I'd love to see a black and white classic monster house again. It's been a while. Actually, what Joey and I were talking about last night,
Resident Evil.
Yeah, Resident Evil has a resurgence happening now.
Yeah. They could dig that Resident Evil 2 house out of mothballs and put that back up, because they just redid that movie this year, or redid that game this year.
Yeah, and I know when that house came out, everybody was bemoaning the fact, like, this house, and now it's popular revisionist history where everyone's running out to get the game and in love with it again. So it would be fun to see that emerge as a property. There's a bunch of games.
Yeah, there's Doom. There's another Doom movie coming out later this year, and I think another Doom game.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Howl-O-Scream. I know we're almost at time here, but Howl-O-Scream 2019. It'll be interesting to see what they do with Busch Gardens. We're losing spots where there were two houses previously, and I think that's under like Gwazi and the Pirate House, and I can't remember the ride name that's going there, but I think it might be that orange roller coaster. I'm not sure, but the spot for the house is gone, so you'd almost essentially be down to four houses, unless they find room for more haunts to be located in Busch Gardens. It's a really interesting logistics issue. So I think that does it for the big two players, at least in Florida.
Yeah, I think here in Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, we had the anniversary house last year that was advertised as 1 year only. The Vault 20 house. So I'm sure we'll see at least one new house, unless they're going to cut back on one house. I'd like to see some things kind of... I did hear that Cornered is not going to return this year. I don't know if it's going to be replaced or if they're just getting rid of it. But, with Howl-O-Scream here, and like the one in Tampa, they do recycle some houses and usually throw at least one or two new ones out there every year. So but no rumors as far as what those could be.
And then last but not least, I think we've got some Hauntcons coming up. We've got Spring Spooky coming up in March. It's actually happening the same weekend that Transworld is happening in St. Louis. But Spring Spooky, they've got a pretty good guest list happening already. They've announced Christopher Lloyd. I know Christopher Lloyd's also announced for MegaCon, so he seems to really be out there pounding the pavement for autographed dollars. But Christina Ricci is at Spooky, the cast of E.T., the cast of Cujo. I think that they said Rico Browning is back there again, so that's one of Joey's favorite people. We still have to ask him. We have to ask him about that foam suit that was out at Silver Springs. So it's Spring Spooky coming up. I'm not sure if we'll hit that or Transworld at this point. I think I'm kind of 60-40 on going towards St. Louis instead. And HauntCon just wrapped up. That's another giant convention for haunters across the country to go to. And of course, then we also have MidSummer Scream coming back up again in July. And I know when we left there last year, I was like, oh, it was a great place. I'm not going to come back again. And now I'm looking all systems go to try to get back out to California to go back to that con again this year. That the haunt area for that is supposed to be expanded, more so than it was even last year. So it'll be
there were some great haunts.
Yeah.
In that spot, and for such a small, for the fact that it's basically shared space inside of a convention center, they did some great stuff in there.
Yeah, I agree. So,
just let everybody know the real reason you want to go.
Jack in the Box.
More Jack in the Box. So, Jack in the Box after we eat a Cabo Wabo.
And then.
Well, MidSummer coincides really well this year with the opening of probably the biggest theme park addition of all time out in Disneyland. So, a California trip seems to be in order to be able to get out to Disneyland for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. And also to hit Universal Studios again and Knott's and try to do some local stuff and everything out there. So, seems to make sense to go to MidSummer. So
we'll report back in our next episode which way Kyle's leaning.
Oh, I thought you were going to say we'll report back in the next episode what happened at MidSummer Scream, because that'll be the next thing that we talk.
You never know.
Star Wars Land, is it worth it?
Yeah, so obviously we're not going to be back on the mics next week unless there's some big news to share with you guys. But in the meantime, follow us at 4Hauntsman on Twitter, as well as keeping it tuned to IOM Geek, or you can follow Kyzman, KYZMAN on Twitter, or me, IOM Paul. I don't know, Joey, you're welcome to share your Twitter address.
It's Joey Swear Words.
Joey Swear Words on Twitter. And, we'll obviously let you know when a new episode comes out. Anything else, guys?
No, I think that's a wrap. Again, just apologies that we didn't type things out last year, and I think a lot of things always come down to scheduling, right? So, I know as an audience and a member or a consumer, you want things to be consistent, and we really failed on that measure. But we're gonna try to do better, and hopefully continue with content throughout the off season here, leading into the season, and keep you guys in tune. So hopefully you stick with us.
Thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. We'll be back soon.